and it's at a real price point that you can make some improvements on. Let's take a look at what we can do with that property, particularly with our state incentives through the Mass Save program, which are incredibly generous. I mean, for air sealing and insulation work, zero. You can insulate a 2,500 square foot home and pay $500 for the insulation company to come in and do full insulation on, and for air sealing, nothing, right? Heat pump water heaters, air source heat pumps are so well incentivized. And then solar PV in the state, we can get a home to net zero energy, and it can look beautiful in the end with the right architect or builder to remodel these homes. And the buyer's thinking, yes, that's exactly what we wanted. This makes all kinds of sense.
This is the Regenerative Real Estate Podcast. Revitalizing the world together. Welcome to the Regenerative Real Estate Podcast. This is your host, Neil Collins. It is a show that is supported by our work at Latitude Realty. In it, we explore our natural and built environments and how they can be used as a force for good. The show sets out to inspire impactful ideas, meaningful change, human wellness, and ecological restoration through interviews and easy-to-digest conversations. Our guests range from industry leaders to iconoclasts, from both well-known figures to everyday people leading extraordinary lives. This is a show for people looking for education and inspiration on how real estate can be done differently. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Regenerative Real Estate Podcast. This is your host, Neil Collins, and today I am joined by a guest that I've been really looking forward to for quite some time. His name is Craig Foley. I think that Craig is in Boston, Massachusetts right now, but he can confirm. And Craig is the founder of Sustainable Real Estate Consulting. He is the Chief Sustainability Officer at Layer Realty, and he runs a residential real estate team called Rethink 39, which is a phenomenal name, and we'll get into that, I'm sure. But Craig, thanks so much for taking the time and coming on to the podcast.
My pleasure, Neil. It's great to talk to you. I am just north of Boston right now.
Okay, you are in Boston.
Yeah.
Great. Well, Craig, can you introduce yourself and your background to our listeners? Because I've known about your name for some time now, and I've really looked up to the work that you're doing with sustainability and real estate. And for those that don't know you, I think you've got a phenomenal background that's very interesting.
Well, thanks. Sure, I'll kind of do the big picture piece. So I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer for Layer Realty Partners. We're the largest independent real estate brokerage in New England with 30 plus offices, 500 plus agents. And as far as we can tell, and we've looked into this at NAR, Neil, we're the first residential real estate brokerage that's hired a chief sustainability officer. So that's kind of a part-time position for me, but my job is really to make sustainability part of the DNA of our company. And that's thanks to our incredible CEO, a woman named Stacey Alcorn, who's just, she is so forward-thinking in how she looks at the world in general, and has really embraced what we've been doing in terms of bringing sustainability as part of the real value proposition for our brokerage. So I think we're doing some really exciting stuff there. I'm very proud to be working for Layer and working with Stacey on all of this. And I do a lot of volunteer leadership work for the National Association of Realtors too. That's been incredible too, to see how much NAR has moved on this intersection of real estate and sustainability, particularly over the last 3 or 4 years. There's been huge movement at the highest levels of our trade organization, at the leadership team level. In fact, we created a new group called the Sustainability Advisory Group, which has a direct relationship with the leadership team to advise our leadership team on sustainability in the real estate sector. And in fact, this last year, it was really exciting. I had a chance to lead a presidential advisory group. So last year's president was Vince Malter for NAR, and he asked me to chair a presidential advisory group on looking at the impact of extreme weather events on the real estate industry. And boy, was that eye-opening for everybody that was included in that PAG, that Presidential Advisory Group. Just some fascinating stuff that came out of that. So in about 3 months, we delivered a 28-page document to the leadership team that we delivered to them last May. And they were blown away with what we found. And we made some really key critical recommendations. One of them was that we needed to create a full-blown sustainability plan, 10-year sustainability plan for our trade organization. The leadership team took all of our recommendations and approved them. So that set into this new cycle of creating a full-blown sustainability plan, which we worked with consultant Willis Towers Watson in the Chicago office to create that. And by the November annual meetings, we had created a full 10-year plan, which we're now implementing. So, and I think, part of what NAR is driving this is that they see this, we're under a lot of stress in this industry. There's a lot of competition. There's a lot of competition for a trade organization. There's a lot of competition for us as realtors, as brokers. They see this as the opportunity to really be one of the places where we can really deliver value in ways that we never have before. And so I'm really excited to be part of that voice. There's a bunch of realtors scattered across the United States that are really leading a progressive voice forward in NAR, and it's really exciting to see.
I'm glad to hear that, because NAR.
I'm glad to say it, dude. Believe me. I mean, it's great.
For people that are listening, NAR, the National Association of Realtors, has probably got over 1 million, 1.4 million subscribers, beneficiaries of it. It's a behemoth of an organization, and there's so many different transactions that are represented. So it actually, if you're looking at it from what is the potential impact that you can have, that is one organization that I think has some tremendous opportunity and obligation and power.
I mean, we're the largest trade organization in the United States. We have two main headquarters. The main headquarters is in Chicago, but we also have a LEED Silver certified building that was built in 2004. It was the first private LEED certified building in DC. It's, I think, 13 stories, 14 stories, and it looks right down on the Capitol. So we have, because we're the largest trade organization in the US, we have a very active group of lobbyists that are involved with whatever's happening with the current administration or with the House or the Senate, right? So there's a lot of, I mean, right now we're very actively involved in the infrastructure bill, for instance, and what that's going to look like, what that could look like, and what our part will be in that. So, I got involved with this stuff with NAR back in 2013. I won an Evergreen Award. So NAR gives out an award to 3, 4, 5 realtors every year that are kind of leading the charge on sustainability. And I won one of those awards. And I started to get involved at that point with the trade organization at the volunteer leadership level, and just have kind of grown. I've been really lucky to have some great mentors to guide me through this. But the first committee meeting that I sat in on, I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but I'm going to say it anyway, was the Land Use, Property Rights, and Environment Committee. So I'm the vice chair this year of that committee, and I'll be chair next year. But the first meeting I sat in on, one of my mentors, this woman, Laura Stuckel, was sitting, she sat me down in the seat off the aisle, and she sat in the aisle seat, and she said, I'm sitting here so you can't get up and talk. You've got to just listen to this meeting, because the nickname for this committee is the Land Use and Anti-Environment Committee. That was 2013. And right now I'm the vice chair of that committee, and we're looking, we just changed our energy policy last year. We're looking strongly at how we interact in DC right now in a completely new way. Now, we have voices on all sides of the political aisle, obviously, and we're a member-driven organization. We have to listen to all members, the leadership team does. But what was so exciting to me was to learn that we were a member-driven organization, and that my voice actually does matter in this organization. We can speak freely and loudly and actually move our organization, a very, very powerful trade organization, in ways that we want. So, one thing I would encourage your listeners to do is to get involved at your local association, at the state association, but certainly at the national association too. We need your voice, and there's so much that can be done and so much that has been done, and we're only at the tip of the iceberg right now. So get involved, absolutely.
Well, Craig, the overarching theme of this show with other guests that come on is that you don't wake up one day and just say, you know what, I'm really interested in sustainability, and I'm going to be the chief sustainability officer at a big real estate company out of the Northeast and influence a major trade organization. What was your entry point first into real estate and then into really going down this path of sustainable real estate?
Well, I have a Master of Fine Arts in acting and directing, Neil. So completely disconnected.
Just like all the other real estate agents.
Exactly right. But I had, I was a director, and I taught acting and directing at Emerson College and Salem State College, a bunch of Northeastern, a bunch of colleges around here as adjunct faculty. And I was up for a tenure track position, and I didn't get it. It was kind of for all the wrong political reasons. And I had just my wife and I had just had our second kid at that point, and I really didn't I just didn't feel like it was responsible for me to go back to trying to make a living freelancing as a director in Boston, which is just brutal. I mean, it's just absolutely brutal. And I was like, well, what can I do? And I said, I'll get my real estate license. So that was 1999. And I found that I really loved it because I love architecture. I love design. But over time, as much as I love selling real estate and helping families move into properties or sell properties and build wealth, which is, what we really do, we're a real economic driver. I was getting tired of, just going through the process of just residential real estate on a daily basis. It was very successful early on. It was really exciting to see the success, particularly somebody in the theater that didn't make much money. To be able to make money was pretty cool. My wife was pretty excited about the whole thing, but it was really drying out. So by the time we hit that recession in 2007, 2008, I was really at the kind of end of my ropes. And I had sold a home to a friend of mine who was in the power sector. He worked for Constellation Energy, so an energy provider here in the Northeast. And I was always really fascinated with how the power markets work and how wholesale pricing worked in the power markets. So we decided to start an energy management and procurement firm when the recession hit. And I kept my license active, but I was really focused on this and learned a lot from this guy, Tim, about how the power markets work. And, then Green Communities Act, a really important piece of legislation, passed in Massachusetts, 2008, 2009. And I could see that nobody was thinking about this stuff in terms of residential real estate, and what a huge opportunity, particularly with this legislation that had passed and how it opened up our net metering law, how net metering was going to work in the state for residential homeowners. And I thought, oh my goodness, there's a real opportunity here. So there were a bunch of factors that came into, In Charge kind of dissolved 2011, 2012. And my eyes were on residential real estate, including this stuff at that point. Even though there wasn't a there in the marketplace, I suckered my wife into saying, into going full hog into this stuff and seeing what we could create. And I'm sure glad that I did that. Now we're seeing the fruition of a real market. As you said, I have a team called the Rethink 39 team. The 39 that we're rethinking is the 39% U.S. energy consumption that's attributed to the built environment. And every member of my team, all 9 of us, believe that we can be part of a better future and lower that percentage over time, even with the the ungreenest buildings on the face of the earth, just by sending them to the Mass Save program, doing air sealing, insulation work. But really what our specialty has become has been working with developers that are building net zero energy homes, LEED certified homes, passive house certified homes. And we've really established a place here in the Boston marketplace where we're the leaders in proper marketing of these homes, but more importantly, valuation, right? And that valuation connection goes directly back to the work that I did with that energy management and procurement firm, understanding what that value proposition actually looks like. And, fortunately, I'm in a state that's really moving the ball forward legislatively as well.
Yeah, I've seen what Massachusetts is doing, and it's certainly putting up really big numbers on just the amount of square footage in high performance buildings like LEED and other things like that. It's certainly a front runner. I've also heard you say a quote that I had to write down whenever I was doing my homework for this, that you saw a business opportunity that turned into an obligation.
Yes.
And I wanted to bring that up to really dive into that, to see what you meant by that.
Yeah, well, I definitely saw this in 2011, 2012 as a huge business opportunity because it was untapped in the marketplace and just the potential was there. If I work my way through this and work my way up the ladder, I knew we were going to have a great business opportunity. But the more you learn about the potential, not only as a business opportunity, but the potential to really tackle the toughest challenges that are in front of us in terms of the energy crisis and certainly the environmental emergency that we're dealing with right now. And obviously my awareness of that environmental emergency has grown greatly since 2011, 2012. But the combination of those things has just made me deeply committed to making sure I do everything that I can on a daily basis to get up and try to figure out the right ways to meet these challenges that are in front of us. I firmly believe, and my team feels this as well, that we can do well and do good. I think anybody that's in residential real estate can do good if you're motivated. But we also have this great opportunity in front of us now that we can do well as well. We can really make a difference with the communities that we live and work in and be part of a solution to the biggest challenges that are in front of us. So that's a huge driver for me. I have two kids, a 25 and a 21-year-old. I'm hoping at some point they will have grandchildren at some point. And I just thinking forward about what I know the world will look like if we don't tackle these challenges this decade, right? We are on a short timeline right now. We're ticking every second off. It gets us to 2030, in which we really have to have solutions in place. So I wake up every morning thinking about that, being motivated by that, and being really happy Neil, to go to work, to do the work that I'm doing. I feel very motivated, very excited, and it's very fulfilling to me.
That's why your name Rethink 39 resonates with me, and why residential real estate also, I see it as such a huge catalyst, because it not only is the built environment contributing to 39% of emissions, but it's also what really drives it home for everybody, is that we're all living in buildings. We all are reliant upon transportation, either private or public, that is getting fueled somehow. We are all bringing food in through the front door. So you pull in one thing and it ripples across the web in other places. And that's why just this symbology of a home and what you can do there is so incredible. And I think the greatest work that we're doing now is how do we actually create spaces that are resilient going forward into the 21st century? And that's what I'm curious. Have you spent a lot of time really working with adaptation on buildings, or have you gone about it more from the new development side?
Well, we do both. And resiliency, you mentioned a very important word, is critical, right? We're talking, primarily the 39% is on energy consumption, but let's not forget that with a changing climate, every building that's out there is at risk. I mean, we know that from California. We know that from what happened in Texas this last winter. We know that with every extreme weather event that happens, on the East Coast or in Louisiana, that these events are getting more powerful and more. They're happening more frequently as well, right? So with that, we know the built environment in our communities are at risk as well. And so how do we think about more resilient buildings as well as buildings that are more energy efficient or, net zero energy or energy positive, so we contribute to the grid in a positive way as well. These are all huge opportunities. And the cool thing about this, again, doing the work at NAR, I've had a chance to sit on Fannie Mae's Energy Advisory Council and Freddie Mac's Energy Efficiency Task Force. And both of our GSEs are looking deeply at this topic. And probably what drives lenders more than energy efficiency is resiliency and the worries about stranded assets that are out there, right? And assets like homes and commercial buildings that are at risk of flooding or wildfires, and you're in Alaska and permafrost is no longer permanent, and what does that mean to building foundations in Alaska, right? I mean, this is happening across the United States, and I know that the lenders are very concerned about what that means to their long-term 30-year portfolios, right? And what that's going to mean to their bottom line. So a big focus for both Fannie and Freddie is they have developed mortgage products that are out there to focus on resiliency improvements for homeowners as well, to be able to lift buildings so that they're less prone to flooding, to make them resistant to do as best we can to make them resistant to wildfires, to extreme weather events, tornadoes, whatever it may be, hurricanes, obviously. So that's a huge piece of this pie as well. When we talk about sustainability, it means so much, Neil. You've hit on some really important factors, but you can see how overarching this is for the real estate industry to be able to tackle right now. We've got so much work to do. It's unbelievable, but the work is actually happening. It's happening at the highest levels. So,
yeah, by this point, I think everybody can collectively say that we have lived through the impacts of climate change. I mean, I grew up in Louisiana and vividly remember Hurricane Katrina. I went to graduate school in Vermont and got flooded out in Hurricane Sandy.
Yeah.
We had the forest fires on the West Coast last summer that is like scarred in my brain. And working in the Maldives, where the plan B for the population whenever sea level rises is let's relocate everybody to the middle of the Australian continent. And you're just like, okay. So this is a global phenomenon, and you start to see what states are doing that, like the private insurance marketplaces in Florida, because regular insurers are not insuring there. And what's going to happen? That's I think the big thing on the macro level. And it's great to hear about Fannie and Freddie also thinking about this. One thing in particular about these big lenders is that whenever we really started to put a lot of our weight on saying, hey, we want to incorporate sustainability, and then we ended up diving into regeneration, was how do we work with the lenders in this work? And you do some sleuthing and you read about energy improvement mortgages, and you go talk to all your lenders that you're used to working with, and they have no idea what that is. And one was like, oh yeah, I took a continuing ed class on that in like 2013, but I've never done one. And that's where I'm still looking for signs of hope on the lender side. Is there anything that maybe I'm in the wrong market here?
Well, this work is happening right now at the ground level. I mean, not at the ground level, at the 50,000 foot level with Fannie and Freddie. It takes a while, particularly in a marketplace that is as hot as it is, right? Think about lender motivation. Now, I'm lucky that I work for Lear Realty Partners. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer, so I deal with our partners, including our main lending partner, a company called Ross Mortgage. And we've motivated the CEO, a guy named Bob Gallagher, to apply to Freddie Direct so that he can be a Freddie Direct lender, because they have the Green Choice mortgage product, which is a phenomenal mortgage product out there. But getting lenders in this environment where interest rates have been below 3% at some points for 30 years, and people are kicking down the doors for the lenders to, refi and for new purchases. I mean, we know how hot the market is right now. It's a very tough time to motivate lenders to take on new products, to, research what those products mean, to train their underwriters about what these mortgage product means, or train their mortgage originators. Very tough time to be putting this stuff into place because of just where we are in the marketplace. But I'm definitely seeing signs that, particularly as interest rates start to rise and we get back to a more normal marketplace, that this is going to happen. We just did for Greater Boston Association of Realtors a green lending roundtable, which was very well attended, and we had Fannie and Freddie there. And what the lenders, again, were most excited about was the resiliency pieces of this, that they saw real opportunity there to deliver mortgages to or refis to homeowners that are looking to improve their property from potential climate issues that are out there. So I think, we're at the beginning of this marketplace, and we all have to, we have to be aggressive in terms of taking the bull by the horns and making sure our voices are heard out there. But we're seeing clear signs that this is coming. But are we there yet? No. And we need everybody's voice. Everybody, let's listen to this, Neil. They all need to get on board and jump in and help out, because we can get this done. It's going to happen whether, people like it or not. This is happening right now, and it's inevitable this is happening. So now's the right time to be on board with this stuff. There's no question about that. And the market opportunity is huge.
Yeah, I got to tell you, Craig, one of the things that we've had to come up with a workaround, essentially, whenever people ask, where's the sustainability financing? And say, look, let's not count on that. Let's count on what is the conventional financing that we can get, and what are the things that we know are going to make an improvement towards health and wellness and resiliency and beauty, comfort. And I can't tell you how many transactions we've been involved in where we wrote a repair addendum for a buyer. You've got to replace the hot water heater, and they replaced it with whatever the cheapest new alternative was. If you're going to get a new HVAC, the newest, maybe a high efficiency, no, probably not a high efficiency gas furnace, but that happens in every single real estate transaction where the council is just not thinking like what kind of appliances should be going in these properties that are going to be working for the 21st century?
Well, heat pumps is the clear answer to that. There's no question about it. I mean, heat pump water heaters and air source heat pumps there's been, the other piece of this, is that there's been a building science revolution that's happened over the last 8-10 years, over the last decade, right? I mean, the other part of this is builders and architects, right? I mean, we all know builders that have been building for 30 years, and they're doing it the same way every time. They don't want to learn anything new. They don't want to know what the latest technology is. Fine, get left behind, that's fine, whatever. But I know so many builders, the builders that we work with, that are deeply engaged on building to passive house standards now, right? That's the real driver in this marketplace right now in Boston. But LEED certified properties, absolutely. I've done, I've got so far this year, I've got 7.5 million sold or in escrow. I got a closing tomorrow, and 6.9 of that fits into, I use this term, kind of the 50 shades of green, right? So, there's some level of greenness with all of those transactions. And probably the largest one that I did was a $4+ million property in Weston, Massachusetts, that was LEED Platinum certified, 14.72 kW solar PV system on the rooftop. That was kind of the 50th shade of green, right? But we're looking at all different elements of the spectrum. We're finding, even for buyers, they tend to be younger, but I'm 58. I care about this stuff as well, right? But the millennial generation, let's face it, they really get what's going on here. And some of our guidance, we're working with buyers that are kind of your age, right? Is look, let's take a look at, the market is so competitive right now. Let's take a look at the property that's been on the market for 60 or 80 days, right? that nobody's seemingly wanting, and it's at a real price point that you can make some improvements on. Let's take a look at what we can do with that property, particularly with our state incentives through the Mass Save program, which are incredibly generous. I mean, for air sealing and insulation work, zero. You can insulate a 2,500 square foot home and pay $500 for the insulation company to come in and do full insulation on, and for air sealing, nothing, right? Heat pump water heaters, air source heat pumps are so well incentivized. And then solar PV in the state, we can get a home to net zero energy, and it can look beautiful in the end with the right architect or builder to remodel these homes. And the buyer's thinking, yes, that's exactly what we wanted. This makes all kinds of sense. We can go down this road as well. And then, my team is there. They're our customer for life at that point. When we work through a transaction, it's closed, and we continue to work with them and help guide them and set them up with the right people to lower their operating costs to zero, or better sometimes, to be paid by the utility company to live in a home. They know that we know how to market that home and value it appropriately whenever it is that they go to sell.
Hey everybody, this is Neil. We are going to get back to this great conversation in just 1 second. But I think it's fair to say that right now we are facing some pretty unprecedented challenges in the 21st century. I mean, you name it, environmentally, socially, economically, we've got some big problems that we need to overcome. And that's why, for me personally, and the people that work with us at Latitude, we want to dedicate our time and our energy so that we are not only working to put food on the table and a roof over our heads, but also make the world a better place. And so if you are at all interested in combining your sustainability values with a very powerful financial model of real estate, then I highly encourage you to check out what we are doing at Latitude. We are creating something truly special with a tribe of change agents that for now is working across North America. And hopefully one day in the future, with you coming on board, we can be working across the globe. So please check us out. You can go to www.chooselatitude.com, or you can find us on social media at latitude.realty on Instagram, and we are also on Facebook. Okay, let's get back into it. Yes, the valuation. I think that's really where, through listening to your work and researching it more, that you've really found a unique opportunity is whenever you go talk to another real estate agent that may not even know what net zero is, and we've come across that many times. We've been called into an architect's house, like here in my local city of Portland. We've been called in where it's like, hey, I've got a net zero property, and I talked to my real estate agent that I've used for a long time, and she didn't know what that meant. And so I called you guys, and I'm curious because I've got a hunch that's you've got to have tons of experience with similar stories.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And the cool thing now is we're getting contacted by buyers that are looking for net zero energy homes because they realize that we're the group that tends to list these, or if we're not listing them, we know where they are, right? So that's another interesting piece out of all of this as well. Part of the driver of this too, you mentioned valuation, and that's really critical for people to grasp onto, that there is a different value proposition, despite what you may hear from real estate agents, that can be appraised. So that there are a series of appraisers now. I don't know how many there are in Oregon, but there are a series of appraisers. We've got 12 of them in this state that have gone through the Appraisal Institute's Valuation of Sustainable Buildings program. So that's a program, very rigorous course set for appraisers, 3 very, very long courses and tests to pass. They know the valuation process. Probably the most important thing from my group, given that we have 100,000 homes in the state now of Massachusetts with solar PV on the rooftop or ground mounted, and they're transacting daily, and people recognize solar PV. Okay, I got to know what I'm doing, because you can see that, as opposed to energy efficiency, which is behind the walls, and realtors get away with not knowing anything about it. But with solar PV, you can't get you have to know what you're doing. And so, there's a process using something called the PV value tool, which can be found at pvvalue.com. The homeowners put a power plant on their rooftop, right? And that power plant is producing income for the homeowners. So when we went to real estate school, when we took our license, for me, it was 99. I vaguely remember that there were 3 ways that we could value property: comps, the income approach, and the cost approach. But once we go into residential real estate, we immediately forget the other 2, and all we think about are comps, right? Now, solar PV, host-owned solar PV in the residential real estate marketplace has brought the income approach back into fold. So that may be an additional $25,000 worth of contributory value when you use that income approach on top of the comps, which add up to $500,000, right? So, if I'm in a situation where I'm competing against other real estate agents that don't know about this, and it's a homeowner that has solar PV on their rooftop, the first thing that they're going to ask is, doesn't this add value to your home? And I bring out the PV value tool. I ask for the installation agreement so we can add the inputs. We come up with a contributory value. Then I have it's a much more nuanced conversation about what the list price should be. Hot market, let's list it at $529 with the contributory value published in the MLS, uploaded so the buyer's agent can see it, the buyers can see where we came up with that, the appraisers can see it as well. And we demand a qualified appraiser. Now, we can't pick specific appraisers, but we can demand a qualified appraiser as a listing agent. And we have to stick our heels in the ground about that and ask for one of those 12 appraisers that have gone through the Valuation of Sustainable Buildings program. So part of the thing that I did with Ross Mortgage when I became the Chief Sustainability Officer here in 2019 was make sure that they had at least 2 of those appraisers on their roll, so that they, with their AMC, so they could roll those appraisers through when we had those type of properties. That kind of relationships work very well. So that you can engage lenders on this topic right now. We have the source for the appraisers. You can find them on the Appraisal Institute website. We can start to put these pieces together, and it's worked for me, Neil. It's worked for our business. It's really turned into real business for my whole team. So it's so exciting to see that it's happened, But it takes some knowledge and competence, and it takes some commitment to getting the work done. Definitely.
Craig, with the president announcing he wants to cut emissions by 50%. With very ambitious goals of 2030, all new vehicles sold are going to be electric. Can you help paint that picture for people that it may not have sunk in yet, what changes that's going to result in? That, this is something that I think is going to impact the residential market, of just the physicality of what we need. What are some of those things that you really see if you're tasked with, okay, we need to cut emissions by that much? How does that relate to your work?
What a great question that is. I'm going to relate that also to what's happening in Massachusetts and what just passed legislatively with our next gen climate bill that our great Republican governor, Charlie Baker, signed into law. But I'm obviously a huge fan of this administration, over 70% of U.S. citizens understand that climate change is real, that it's happening right now, and it's created by us, by human emissions, right? We get what's going on. And there's such a huge opportunity in this transition to a clean energy economy, right? That is the opportunity. That's what President Biden was speaking about last night. I was so thrilled to hear his address to Congress and how he addressed it and how he tagged the challenge of a changing climate into jobs and a value proposition for our country again to take real leadership in the rapidly emerging technologies that are out there. We've done so well in the past, starting with the Marshall Plan after World War II in terms of investment, leadership in research and development in this country. That's how we became the leader. And no one was able to realize the benefits of that more than the American worker. And I am so thankful that President Biden addressed that transition to the clean energy economy the way he did last night in his speech to Congress. So what does that mean to us? It means a lot, this transition to a clean energy economy. When we look at it in Massachusetts, there's three elements to that, right, that kind of directly relate to the built environment, to our sector, to real estate. One is we're one of the 29 states in the United States that have a renewable portfolio standard. So we have a commitment for all utility providers and power providers in the state to increase their renewable energy capacity by 2% a year. So that by 2030, we're at 16% right now. I think we're going to move to 4% a year in the not too distant future as well. So we're moving towards a greener grid, right? We know that in new construction, both commercial and residential, we can build net zero energy buildings cost effectively. We can do it. We have the technology is there. It's just not that difficult. And we have builders, we have subs now in the state of Massachusetts, which is critical. You've got to have the right subs that know how to do this as well, right? So we can do that. And if we can increase efficiency in existing buildings with the new technologies that are out there, we can do this cost effectively as well by 30% by the time we get to 2030. Guess what? Now with those three things, a greener grid, new construction coming in at net zero energy, buildings, and 30% efficiency for existing buildings, we really have a solution that we can be part of every day of our lives. At Massachusetts, I'm sorry, I get so excited about this stuff, Neil, but Massachusetts, we just passed this next gen climate bill, and 56 communities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, over 351, signed a letter of support to Charlie Baker to sign this legislation that included an option for communities to have a net zero energy stretch code. So all new construction, and this is it's going through the process with Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources right now, what this is going to actually look like. But 56 communities want that option to require net zero energy building in their communities. Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, Newton, Lexington, Melrose. I mean, I can go on and on with the list of communities that are engaged in this. So from my perspective, as the leader of the Rethink 39 team, that's a group of realtors that's deeply engaged in this, and for Lear Realty Partners, this is just a huge business opportunity that's out there as well, right? I mean, we're residential real estate agents that aren't looking at this right now. It's craziness. Why would you not want to get your NAR green designation, at least be able to speak the language to consumers and communities that care about this stuff and be engaged with this topic?
Now, you'd think it would be an obligation at this point in time that part of licensing would have to include understanding energy efficiency, sustainability measures, and really what the policy changes are that are coming down the pipe. And I think that
I love where you're going with that. It should be an obligation.
Yeah, and your enthusiasm for this really ignites the policy side that I think some people get overwhelmed with. They're like, I'm gonna stand back from politics because it's a little too vitriolic. It's not really resonating with me. But I think if you're going to really lean in, it just shows that you've leaned in a lot, and you've got such an enthusiasm and passion for it that I'm sure that you are extremely well poised to do a lot of good with your practice.
Well, thank you. I think we are, and advocacy is a critical part of this as well, right? So the co-founder of the Rethink 39 group is my good friend, Phil Massa, and he worked as under the Senate president several years ago at the Massachusetts State House as his chief legislative aide. So Phil has deep connections on Beacon Hill here in Boston as well, right? We have realized that advocacy, is critical, for moving the ball forward, but it's critical for the Rethink 39 team's success as well. So we've been deeply engaged in these policy making with legislators that are certainly on the same side. And we do a lot of for several of the green building projects that we've done open walls, open houses, right? So open houses that before the interior is put up, before the heating and cooling systems are put in, just so you can see what a net zero energy building looks like. And we had, Mayor Walsh in 2018, now Secretary Walsh, come. We had 200 people in the middle of January on one of the coldest days we've had, freezing their asses off, going through this net zero energy building that people were just amazed at. And we've done that consistently with these larger projects. We just had Senator Eldridge, who's a state senator that's very behind this stuff, for a project that we've been working on as well. Tying in the folks that get this on the political level to what it is that we're selling and connecting it to communities and actually being able to move the needle for developers that are looking for density bonuses, right? So all of this stuff kind of works together, if you're thinking forward about this.
Open walls, open houses.
Yes.
I love that. I recently went to a living building challenge project, a commercial building, 5 stories tall. And the highlight was the composting toilet room of just huge composting toilets. I'm going to have to remember the open wall.
Well, LBC, that's another certification that we haven't seen too much of that yet. So I'm really looking forward to being in more buildings that are built to the living building challenge. Fascinating work going on there. Definitely.
Oh, that's really what gets me going is how do we complete the circle and really understanding that the policy work that needs to go in there, if you want a truly regenerative building, a lot of it is illegal according to code right now.
Right.
You have to connect into the municipal sewer system. You have to have the water system. Talk about a challenge. What a great name for the living building challenge. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, that are listening, it is just it's truly something that I think if we can push the built environment in that direction, then we're doing a tremendous amount of good in that process.
Well, I bet your listeners will agree with me on this, but I think Neil Collins needs to run for office as well in Portland and start to move this stuff through so that it's not.
So when I said that there's some people out there that are uncomfortable with diving into politics, I was actually talking about myself.
Oh, really? Interesting.
It was actually very recently that I got a call from somebody that was asking about what are some examples of the missing middle, the 2 to 4 unit properties that we want to showcase to the city council in San Jose, California. Extreme affordability problems. And that really got me thinking, like, the work that we are doing, even if we're just inspiring people and educating them that their communities aren't going to go to hell in a handbasket if they're increasing urban density, which is also called eco density. But providing the solutions to help people increase their resiliency and generate electricity on their rooftop or in their communities, and how they can grow food in their front yards, and just kind of everything that comes along with this movement. And this is what gets me really fired up, is that we had a branding consultant early on in a couple of years say, who is the sustainability market? And said, it's the people that are really thinking about eco-consciousness, and she had a pretty big price tag to her work, and we didn't end up going forward with it. And I'm so glad, because it gave us the time to really understand that under the banner of sustainability, you have so many different perspectives of the passive house folks and the permaculture people and the zero waste movement and the homesteading movement. And it all kind of coalesces into sustainability and regeneration. And that's why for us, whenever I came to the same point of feeling pretty burnt out on the conventional real estate industry, I said, there's extreme power here. how do I combine that altruism of wanting to see my community change and adapt, but also how do I make money doing that? And I think that's a pretty powerful call for people with real estate licenses across the world to let's marry those two concepts together. And you have to be really up to date on what's going on with the policy. And that's where this conversation is really energizing me, is to just get more familiar with what's going on locally and regionally, and finally seeing some true leadership at the federal level, so that hopefully we can start moving the gauge in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and the EV marketplace too. You missed in that description. That's a driver, but I think it's even beyond that. Suzanne Shelton, who does a lot of work internationally on helping Fortune 500 companies brand sustainability. She's great. She does the study every year called the Echo Pulse study, and last year. She said 74% of U.S. consumers are making purchasing decisions based on the company's environmental reputation. And, that's clear with, food branding that's out there. It's clear now in the EV marketplace, but I think there's a huge opportunity for us to think about that as residential real estate brokerages in our communities being engaged on this topic and making that be part of how we engage consumers and communities. I think that it's not just all of those little subsets. It's people now that realize we've got a real problem, but they just don't know, the climate change thing is so big and overarching, they just don't know where even to start other than buying an EV at this point, or taking a reusable bag into the grocery store. That's something, but we've got our homes and it's such a huge opportunity, and I just don't think that connection point has really been made at this point. That's where we have such a service that we can provide.
Well, for all the listeners out there, you're going to see now why I was really excited to have Craig come on. Craig, this is just, it's tremendous. If the listeners are tuning in from Boston, please check out Rethink 39. I think you provided a lot of inspiration for what we're doing, and I know that it's been a catalyst for others as well. I will continue to tune into your work. I just think it's great that even the realty company that you're with, Layer, has adopted a chief position for chief sustainability officer. I mean, that is true leadership in the marketplace. That's great to see.
Yeah, to be at an executive staff position where sustainability is part of, we've got 7 people on our executive staff, and sustainability is part of every conversation that we have. And it's just, and now the eyes are opening where people are bringing things up to me. This should be something that you're thinking about. And how can we, it's infected the company, and it's really terribly exciting to be part of it.
I got to tell a quick story to you real quick, because I think, and I hope the chief executive officers of our brokerage are not tuning into this, because we posted something in the internal workplace dialogue in the sustainability group, because that's one of the core values of the company. And we're like, wow, that's so amazing that this big international firm, they care about sustainability. And we posted about what we're doing, and it was just crickets in the group. And we quickly realized that the sustainability word to them meant profitability. And it was all about financial metrics. And that's why I think that it's true leadership whenever you have a chief sustainability officer in your brokerage that is really thinking about energy and living and all these different systems of how do we overcome climate, or how do we adapt with climate change, and not just what's the bottom line and how are we going to focus on that.
Well, I think it adds to the bottom line too, if we do it the right way. I'm hoping I'm not the only chief sustainability officer 5 years from now at a residential real estate firm, right? Because that means I haven't presented the value proposition that I need to present. It's what's effective with our agents as well is we have 100,000 homes with solar PV. They're transacting every day, and they realize that they don't know what they're doing. So that's a driver to have a chief sustainability officer too, somebody that can answer those questions. but it is market driven. It's transactionally driven. We shouldn't shy away from that. We shouldn't apologize about that. In fact, we should be aggressive about that, and then be able to layer in everything else that needs to be done to make our companies not only talk the talk, but walk the walk as well.
Amen for that. Well, Craig, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And for everybody, again, tuning in, this is Craig Foley from Rethink 39 at Layer Realty.
Thank you, Neil.
Okay, everybody, that is a wrap. This is another just great episode that I'm so glad that you're able to tune in. And thank you for being interested in regenerative real estate. What we are trying to do is help people and planet thrive together by using the built environment as a catalyst. And so I've got a couple big asks for you. Number one is, can you please go to wherever you're listening to this podcast, leave us a rating and review. Those actually go so far. And since this is such a passion project for us, we really want to be able to attract the best thought leaders from around the world. Second is that if you really like the content that we're putting out, you can find us on our own Medium publication called Regenerative Real Estate. We also have a very active community on Facebook, which is called Regenerative Real Estate and Design, which you can request to be a part of, and we would love to have you. And third, this goes to what we do every single day, helping buyers and sellers demystify sustainability by working with people that want to either buy a property and are trying to figure out the financing of how do I actually live out my values? How do I put that water catchment system on there? Or how do I go finance a solar panel PV array? Or maybe I want to live closer to nature. And what are the properties that are out there that I can do that? And so we represent buyers like that. We also happen to represent sellers that maybe they've already invested in sustainable features. Maybe they have a living building or a LEED certified project. We want to help tell that story. So much of what goes on in the real estate industry is transactional thinking at best, and it translates down into agents just really don't know anything about sustainability. And for us, we think that the value is there, and we want to help highlight really the intrinsic value of it, not just the bedrooms and the baths and the square feet of what typical marketing goes on. So if you know of anybody that wants to buy or sell these kinds of properties that we're talking about, please reach out to us at Latitude, and be sure to subscribe for another great episode coming up next week.